Next on Currents News, the president wants to know who wrote it, and that's the biggest question in Washington tonight. Who's the anonymous author of an anti-Trump op-ed attack? A big development in New York as the Attorney General takes action on clergy sex abuse. The details of what she's doing are ahead. A huge surprise when basketball superstar LeBron James visits Christ the King High School in Queens. Plus the heartwarming story of the police officer helping a woman low on fuel. The news starts right now.
I'll answer your other question directly because I know someone will say, gosh, you didn't answer the question. It's not mine.
Secretary of State Pompeo answering the burning question in Washington. He didn't write the anonymous op-ed. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. The identity of the mysterious author of the anti-Trump essay isn't publicly known yet. The Times, which published the attack, claimed the person is a senior official in the administration. Jeff Zelny has details on some of what's been written.
An anonymous op-ed in the New York Times, written by a senior Trump official, offers a blistering look at how people inside the government are trying to protect the nation from the president. We believe our first duty is to this country, and the president continues to act in a manner that is detrimental to the health of our republic, the person writes. That is why many Trump appointees have vowed to do what we can to preserve our democratic institutions while thwarting Mr. Trump's more misguided impulses until he is out of office.
If the failing New York Times has an anonymous editorial, can you believe it? Anonymous. Meaning gutless, a gutless editorial. We're doing a great job.
Yet it rocked the White House, amplifying and echoing the same overarching theme of a bombshell new book by Bob Woodward.
The book means nothing. It's a work of fiction.
He wants to know who talked to Woodward. But now there's another mystery sure to outrage the president, the official who wrote this anonymously in the Times. The dilemma, which he does not fully grasp, is that many of the senior officials in his own administration are working diligently from within to frustrate parts of his agenda and his worst inclinations. The official, who insists they want Trump to succeed, also writes, "The root of the problem is the president's amorality. Anyone who works with him knows he is not moored to any discernible first principles that guide his decision-making."
That was Jeff Zelny reporting. Vice President Mike Pence today led the charge against the op-ed. Speaking to reporters in Florida this afternoon, Pence blasted both the newspaper and the writer.
Well, I think it's a disgrace. The anonymous editorial published in the New York Times represents a new low in American journalism. And I think the New York Times should be ashamed. And I think whoever wrote this anonymous editorial should also be ashamed as well. Anyone who would write an anonymous editorial smearing this president, who's provided extraordinary leadership to this country, should not be working for this administration. They ought to do the honorable thing and they ought to resign.
First Lady Melania Trump weighed in this morning. She called the anonymous op-ed writer a coward and accused the person of trying to sabotage the country. President Trump is defending Pope Francis and the way he's dealing with the clerical sex abuse. The chief executive telling the Daily Caller, quote, "The Pope is handling it the best anyone can handle it." The president also said of the crisis, quoting here again, "It's one of the sadder stories because I respect so much the Catholic Church." He added the scandals are having a negative impact on the church. A big development tonight in the clerical sex abuse crisis. New York's Attorney General Barbara Underwood has launched an investigation of all 8 Catholic dioceses in the state. She's also issued subpoenas for records. In a statement to Currents News, Underwood said, quote, "Victims in New York deserve to be heard. We are going to do everything in our power to bring them the justice they deserve." Now, the Diocese of Brooklyn has a toll-free and confidential sexual abuse reporting line. That number is 888-634-4499. And for more information, you can also go to the Diocese of Brooklyn's website, dioceseofbrooklyn.org, and click on Protecting Our Children. This move follows a 2-year-long grand jury investigation in Pennsylvania that accused 300 priests of molesting more than 1,000 children. The national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, joins us now. Christopher, thank you for being with us. Let's get right to it, Christopher. What does this action by the Attorney General mean for the church?
Well, Liz, it's big news with an uncertain end. This means that, Archives that go years, decades back are going to be opened up, subpoenaed, and under a full scrutiny outside of the confines of the church. They will have an independent review, which is, in light of the Pennsylvania grand jury report, what so many Catholics have been calling for, but it also means prepare for bad news ahead, most likely.
Now, what's been the response, if any, from church leaders so far?
Liz, it's been very admirable. Many of the dioceses, including here in Brooklyn, have issued statements saying they will cooperate, and they welcome the chance to, in a sense, air out the church's dirty laundry so that children can be made safe. And so I think we've seen a lot of church leaders step forward saying the time is now to get this right.
Now we have this announcement, we have subpoenas possibly coming. How does this process unfold going forward? Will there be a grand jury as there was in Pennsylvania?
It's too early to say at this point, Liz, so I think we'll first start with the subpoenas and documents will be received, but I think it's most likely that a grand jury will be necessary to do the thorough sort of investigation that, like Pennsylvania, takes a year, 2 years to really uncover all of this.
Now we have Pennsylvania. Now we have New York, which begs the question now, are there others launching investigations that you know of?
Yes. In fact, New Jersey announced today that they would dedicate a task force to this. The Archdiocese of Chicago has said that they will be meeting with their Attorney General in Illinois later this month. In Florida, several counties and dioceses have initiated conversations. We've seen the same in Missouri and Nebraska and other parts of the country. So these are sort of conversations that are happening. Many people said after Pennsylvania that every single state in this country is eventually going to go through a similar process. So I think we're just at the very beginning of a long, long road ahead.
Now we know these are being initiated by lawmakers, obviously, but what kind of cooperation does the church typically offer in such investigations?
Liz, I think the church, starting in 2002, when it drafted its Dallas Charter for the Protection of Minors, said we're going to have a zero tolerance policy. And as a part of zero tolerance, we're going to open up our files, open up our archives, make our officials work together and in tandem with law enforcement. And so I think the church is actually going to be, fairly transparent here. One of the things we learned in Pennsylvania was that it took a look at 6 different dioceses, and 5 of the 6 bishops in that diocese in that investigation did not testify, and only 1 did. And one of the things that I think a lot of Catholic officials realized after that is that the best thing to do is not to play defense, but to play offense and say, we'll tell you what we know. We're going to sit across from a table with you. And I think the church has just started to learn a lot of lessons following Pennsylvania that will actually serve it better going forward.
All right, Christopher, I have to ask you, as a reporter, how do you follow this particular story?
Without much sleep. We're gonna start reviewing these documents as they become available, and we'll keep you posted on it.
All right, Christopher, thank you so much for that report. And this just in, the Brooklyn Diocese has received the subpoena sent by the Attorney General and is in the process of reviewing it. The diocese said in the statement, quote, "We have been collaborating closely with law enforcement for many years and stand ready to work with her office on this investigation." In 2002, the Diocese of Brooklyn handed over all allegations of sexual abuse of a minor by a priest or deacon to the district attorneys in Brooklyn and Queens. Since that time, we have adopted a zero tolerance policy and have reported any and all allegations of sexual abuse to law enforcement. A parish in Queens opened its doors to the community last night to express their frustrations with the scandals rocking the church. Blessed Virgin Mary Help of Christians in Woodside held a parish town hall meeting for the lay people in the community to voice their anger and despair with the current evils within the church. The floor was open to the parishioners as Father Chris O'Connor answered their questions.
I've been a strong supporter of Pope Francis. Recently I read something where his latest comment was he was being silent because he felt it was called for. That, I feel like that one threw me back, because that's the problem. We've been silent.
People are just nervous about his lack of answering to certain questions, and also to why was someone like Archbishop McCarrick allowed to continue for so long? Who knew what? Who knew when?
Father O'Connor hopes the town hall is just a step in addressing the evil that still lurks within the church. A former Roman Catholic priest who served in Michigan is the center of a high-profile sex abuse case. After pleading no contest to sexual assault charges against 3 victims, Rebecca Trilek reports the case is not yet closed.
The day before his first trial was set to begin, former Catholic priest Robert DeLand entered no contest pleas to 7 charges. He's accused of sexually abusing 3 young men at his Saginaw Township home, as well as the Tittabawassee Township church where he worked.
The pleas yesterday did not stop the investigation. This is still continuing. This is not over.
At a news conference, Saginaw County Assistant Prosecutor Mark Gartner revealed the Michigan State Police Computer Crime Unit is still analyzing the evidence collected during raids.
We followed the evidence and we didn't follow emotion. It's the evidence we're after.
When asked about whether anyone else could be charged,
frankly, I'd like to see no more charges. I'd like to see an end to it, but we're not going to stop it because he pled yesterday.
When sentenced, DeLand will likely spend a year in jail, 5 years on probation, and register as a sex offender. Gartner says the task force looking into the abuse is still working.
It's put a real dent in the resources of our efforts in Saginaw County to fight serious and violent crime. We've had to pull detectives from various units to work on this.
Tittabawassee Township Police Detective Brian Berg met one of the teens last November.
Our victim is in counseling now. This has been very traumatic on him.
That teen helped investigators record DeLand. And while investigators feel they had the evidence to convict DeLand, they also know going to trial has risks.
And if we had one juror on there that would, have that philosophy of protecting the mother church no matter what, then we get a hung jury or something of that nature, and then we re-victimize the victims again.
2 of those victims were minors at the time of the assaults. DeLand is free on bond, and there is no word yet on a sentencing date. For the second time in 2 weeks, another Indianapolis priest is being suspended from the archdiocese there after a report of misconduct. Details about the allegations are not immediately available, but the abuse is said to have occurred decades ago. The priest under investigation, Father Patrick Doyle, held various roles, including a full-time instructor at a Catholic Indiana high school. There is data tonight that shows a decline in reported incidents of sexual abuse by clergy. At the peak, during the period of 1970 to 74, the number of cases stood at 1,367. In the most recent time period from 2015 to 17, the number of cases is 22. The information was compiled by the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate. Day 3 of Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation has been tense. Democratic senators grilling Kavanaugh on newly released documents and once more expressing anger toward Republicans over the document release process. Kristen Holmes is in Washington with the latest.
Not mention his name.
A combative kickoff.
Running for president is no excuse for violating the rules of the Senate.
To Day 3 of Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing.
All these documents.
Democrats and Republicans sparring over confidential documents.
Right now?
This process, sir, is a bit of a sham.
In an unprecedented move, Democratic Senators Cory Booker and Mazie Hirono saying they will break Senate rules and release committee classified documents to the public.
This is about the closest I'll probably ever have in my life to an I am Spartacus moment.
Prompting outrage.
There are clear rules about the discussion of confidential material and that there can be consequences to the violations of those rules.
I think he's a number 2 in leadership. Has in effect called for my expulsion from the United States Senate. And I just say bring it. If he wants to go through that process, I fully accept responsibility for what I have done.
The committee saying it cleared the documents in question for release before the hearing. President Trump's Supreme Court pick also downplaying another newly released document, an email from 2003 showing Kavanaugh leaving the door open for the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade, advising not to refer to it as, quote, settled law.
I'm always concerned with accuracy, and I thought that was not quite accurate description of all legal scholars.
Despite the theatrics, Kavanaugh is expected to be confirmed, Republicans holding the majority of the Senate. In Washington, Kristen Holmes, Currents News.
There's a lot more news headed your way. The reason why LeBron James paid a visit to Christ the King High School in Queens. And deadly gunfire erupts on the streets of downtown Cincinnati. The FBI is part of the investigation. The latest is coming up.
Don't get shy now. Don't get shy. Don't get shy.
Wow, the excitement as Catholic high school students capture a moment they will never forget. Basketball players at Christ the King High School in Queens received the surprise of their lives when one of their role models walked through the door of their gym. Currents News' Tim Harfman is here now to tell us more. Tim, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, Liz, before LeBron James begins his season playing for the Los Angeles Lakers, the three-time NBA champion and four-time league MVP decided to make a surprise appearance in the Big Apple. And students at Christ the King High School were in shock when the man nicknamed the King paid a visit to Queens. The Christ the King varsity basketball teams were curious why they were being called into the gym 2 months before their season starts. But then,
all we heard was the mic check, mic check.
Mic check, mic check.
We turned around and he was right there and we ran. It was like LeBron.
NBA star LeBron James walks into the school's gym, sharing the moment on social media.
Don't get shy now. Don't get shy. Don't get shy. Yo, we out here, man. We out here.
And the high school players had their phones out too. The visit is part of LeBron's sponsorship with Nike. For over a decade, the company and NBA star have partnered with Christ the King, which is known for its prestigious basketball programs, including multiple diocesan, city, and state championships in recent years. But this was LeBron's first trip to the Queens Catholic School. He also invited players to check out the locker rooms, renovated by Nike, an area Christ the King hasn't fully upgraded in decades. The rooms are equipped with nearly 900 lockers, inspirational quotes, and a display with LeBron sneakers. And the star's latest shoe is named after the high school, which he also released on social media.
Yo, what's up, y'all? At noon, man. New York, stand up. I got a surprise for y'all. On the sneakers app, we got these LeBron 3, Christ the King, only colorway. Oh yeah, I got mine on.
The special shoe features the school's maroon, white, and gold colors, along with its lion logo. Players appreciate the new gear.
I think it gives us a little bit more motivation to play even better than we already intend to play.
But team members say what is most important is what LeBron had to say, that someday they'll be in his shoes.
It was very inspirational because he was talking about how he's our role model, so we have to be role models to the people coming up after us, you know, younger girls and boys.
It gives the kids a different perspective on being an athlete. You know, it makes them realize that you have to do more if you're in a position of prominence to be able to help the next generation succeed.
And as for those special Christ the King sneakers, only a limited number were released to the public, and they were sold out within minutes. Though their retail price is about $200, they're selling online for as much as $1,800, Liz.
Oh my goodness, that's a pretty penny. But you could sense the excitement of the kids in that package. Now, as for his commitment to education, is Christ the King the only school that LeBron sponsors?
It's not. Through his partnership with Nike, he sponsors a number of schools throughout the U.S. But more importantly, in his own hometown of Akron, Ohio, he opened up an elementary school for kids with free meals, tuition, and bicycles. So he's doing a lot for education.
All right, Tim, thank you so much. That package was fun to watch. People are celebrating across India after a historic ruling. India's Supreme Court has repealed a law criminalizing consensual gay sex, overturning more than 150 years of anti-LGBT legislation. The decision is a major victory for India's LGBT activists and supporters after years of struggling in a country where homosexuality is often repressed.
An immensely important judgment, because today we've been told, like, the legal system now recognizes us as humans. It has given us as a community an identity.
The ruling declared sexual orientation to be an essential attribute of privacy. Several people are dead and others injured after a shooter opened fire in downtown Cincinnati this morning. What sparked the gunfire is being investigated tonight by authorities, including the FBI. Omar Jimenez reports the very latest.
A very horrific situation.
Tragedy in downtown Cincinnati Thursday morning.
I actually got on my knees, kind of got down on the ground.
and then all the cops started coming.
A shooter opened fire just after 9 a.m. at the Fifth Third Bank building in Cincinnati's Fountain Square.
What we know is an individual entered the loading dock area of the building, began firing shots.
Multiple officers quickly confronted the suspect.
There were gunshots exchanged. At this point, the shooter is deceased.
At least 3 other people were also killed, and 2 others were injured.
It scared the heck out of me. I'm still nervous.
Authorities, including the FBI, are now investigating what happened. It's unclear whether the shooter was shot by police or died from a self-inflicted wound.
I believe there is some security camera. We are trying to secure that video, as well as there'll be body cams from the officers that has to be processed.
The motive is still unknown.
You know, these are things that we see happening across the country, and we all have to be vigilant.
What we need as a community is to figure out, not just community, but as a country, is how to end these multiple mass shootings.
Ohio Governor John Kasich says his state will provide the city with any necessary resources during the investigation. Omar Jimenez, Currents News.
Still to come on Currents News, the heartwarming story of a police officer who helped an elderly woman. She credits God for the good deed. We'll be right back. The storm is still far out over the ocean, but alarms are being sounded. Hurricane Florence, the first major hurricane of the Atlantic season, could be coming our way. The Category 3 storm could threaten the East Coast as early as next week. The National Hurricane Center says Florence has maximum sustained winds of 125 miles per hour and about 2,000 miles from the U.S. coastline. A police officer in Michigan went above and beyond the call of duty after he noticed an elderly woman in need at a local gas station. When he realized why she was so distraught, he immediately answered the call to serve, protect, and in this case, to pump. Ali Huxley reports.
Well, that's not going to get you anywhere, really.
Dolores Murata approached the cashier at Citco this past Friday requesting $3 on pump 3. Officer Todd Bing, a St. Clair Shores police officer, was standing in line behind her.
And I didn't have a lot of money. I had a couple dollars and $1 and change.
Once outside, he offered to pump her gas. She sat inside her car and thought,
it seemed like he was putting in a lot of gas because I only told him $3.
Officer Bing had put in an extra $20. Turns out Dolores has been through a lot, struggling to make ends meet since her husband passed away a few years ago.
I just says God must have sent him there for me, you know.
The owner of the Citco gas station who rung her up watched this all unfold.
I thought very highly of him. I thought it was a great thing to do.
So he snapped a pic and put it on Facebook. His post now has 16,000 shares and 3,500 comments. People are thanking the police officer for his good deed and putting his life on the line day in and day out.
That interaction there was kind of just had nothing to do with, for me in the moment, being a police officer. It was just a human thing.
Definitely one of my favorite stories this week. The story posted on social media, lifting spirits, inspiring others. The gas station's owner chipped in too, setting up a GoFundMe page for the elderly woman. That is Currents News. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Liz Faublas. Set your DVR to record this program so that you never miss it, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.